Imagine owning a brand so iconic that it's synonymous with an entire country identity, only to watch it be sold off to a company half a world away. That's what happened with Volvo, a cornerstone of Swedish pride, sold twice and now in the hands of the Chinese conglomerate Geely. This is the story of Volvo, and its bumpy journey from a local symbol to a global icon. The story unfolds in the bustling streets of Paris. Azar Gabrielsen and Gustav Larsen, a talented engineer and a charismatic salesman, first met as colleagues at the ball-bearing company, SKF, and quickly became good friends. They eventually parted ways as they climbed the corporate ladder, but fate reunited them in 1924. Their path reconnected in a bustling Swedish cafeteria. An unexpected encounter led to Gabrielsen's exclamation, "I hear you have been busy with cars. We must meet and talk about it." And so their official meeting occurred in August over the Red Crayfish restaurant. It was at this moment, between the bites of Swedish delicacy, that Gabrielsen and Larsen began to talk about their dream of producing cars in Sweden. Plans were set in motion, and the future of Swedish automotive began to take shape. Cost analysis for passenger car were completed by 1924 and following by blueprints in 1925. Volvo, meaning eye roll, was born in 1926. With 10 initial prototypes, these vehicles first took to the roads in Sweden, marking the beginning of a new era in automotive history. The first car, OV4, also known as Jacob, rolled out onto the streets in 1927. A robust and sturdy car built for the harsh Swedish climate, starting the Volvo legacy of producing safe and sturdy vehicles. Over the decades, Volvo made its mark as a trailblazer in automotive safety. They introduced the world to the 3-point seatbelt in 1959, a life-saving invention that was made standard in all Volvo cars. Recognizing the importance of the 3-point seatbelt, Volvo made a decision that would define their legacy. They opened up the patent. Volvo made the design available to all, free of charge. They placed human life above profit, a decision that would allow the entire automotive industry to adopt this critical safety feature. Once a novel invention, it eventually became standard in all vehicles on the road. Though initially met with resistance, this life-changing invention has proven its immense value. Today, it's estimated that seatbelts have prevented 1 million deaths and critical injuries. The 1970s marked a significant chapter for Volvo as its reputation for reliability was truly solidified, with the launch of Volvo 240, equipped with a B18 engine, also known as the Red Brick. Picture this, it's the 1970s, a time when computers were still a fantasy for most engineers. Designing a car meant relying on pencil, rulers, and pure imagination. The tools that predicts the lifespan of parts were non-existent. So what did Volvo do? They went the extra mile. Volvo engineers put their engines on a 500-hour stress test at full throttle and full load. It was all done to guarantee the engine's reliability. The result is a solid engine that stands the test of time. Irv Gordon, a man whose name became synonymous with the Volvo 240, drove his beloved car for an astonishing 2 million miles and became a Guinness World Record holder. Purchased in 1966, this outlived Irv himself as he passed on in 2018. But the car is still kicking and driven by his mechanic, Nino Gambino. Every brand has their share of ups and downs, and in 1999, Volvo faced one such pivotal moment. Despite pumping money into new product development, the cash register just weren't ringing. High debt load loomed like a shadow, constricting Volvo's ambitions. Volvo's aspirations was to aim for global stardom in the auto industry, but aspirations without resources, that's a tricky path. Enter Ford, with its impressive global expanse, dealership, manufacturing units, and a legacy. This was the partner Volvo needed. Ford's motivation? Expansion into luxury segment. Volvo, with its unwavering commitment to safety and dependability, was the perfect fit. It was a union of strategy, one offering what the other needed. Volvo was sold to Ford in 1999 for $6.5 billion. These moves shocked many in Sweden. The Swedish Icon was now in the hands of an American conglomerate. Many felt Volvo was relinquishing its identity, trading the Swedish soul for an American dream. However, in hindsight, they were right. And as we'll see, the road ahead was filled with twists and turns that no one could have anticipated. Volvo had a number of new technologies that Ford was interested in. For example, Volvo was a pioneer in development of safety features such as airbags and anti-lock brakes. Ford wanted to get its hands on these technologies so that it could incorporate them into its own cars. And in return, Volvo got access to the resources and funding it needed to expand its global reach. At first glance, the match seemed perfect. However, the devil is in the details. You see, combining the complex organizational structure of both was like merging two different languages. This wasn't just about sharing technical blueprints. It was about integrating cultures, decision-making process, and even the very essence of how they did business. For example, the decision-making in their R&D department couldn't have been more different. Ford adopted a regimented approach, placed decision-making in the hands of managers. The engineers worked within strict boundaries and always seeking approvals. On the other side, Volvo thrived on flexibility. Their engineers were not just thinkers, they were decision makers. This was a system that thrived on speed and team-based approach. The complexity of the merger soon became apparent. The very essence that made Volvo, Volvo seems to wane. The global car sales of Volvo fell sharply from its peak of 4.2 million in 1999 to barely 3 million by the late 2000s. The final blow was the 2008 financial crisis that hit automakers hard. Ford, having suffered the biggest loss in its 100 years history, has to rethink its strategy. Enter Li Shufu, the head of Geely Automotive, which had eyed Volvo since 2002. He had put forward the daring idea of buying Volvo, Northern Europe's largest car maker. Fast forward to when Alan Mulally took over as Ford's CEO, the One Ford strategy was announced, with bold plans like selling brands like Aston Martin, Jaguar, and Land Rover. However, Volvo was not on the list, yet Li knew Ford would eventually sell it. Li put forward the Plan V to prepare itself of the acquisition. In 2007, Li sent a letter to Ford US headquarters about purchasing Volvo, but it was ignored. The meeting with Ford CFO in January 2008 went south. Ford, unimpressed by Geely's size, gave a non-committal response. The financial crisis struck in September 2008. The US car market dropped by 17%, while in China it rose by 10%. This concerned Ford, and suddenly...
Well, we do have Volvo held for sale. They're doing progressing with the potential buyers.
And finally, in January 2009, Li visited Ford once more, expressing his clear desire to buy Volvo. His long-term plans for Volvo convinced Mulally that Geely might be the right buyer. The year 2010 saw lengthy negotiations, and finally, Ford agreed to sell Volvo to Geely for $1.8 billion, a discount from Ford's initial $6.5 billion purchase in 2000s. But that's not the end. The road ahead was fraught with challenges. Opposition arose from Volvo unions, and Li had to personally take charge, visiting factories and leaders. In one meeting, the unconvinced engineers asked Geely, "Describe Geely's advantage in 3 words." Li took a long pause and finally uttered the English phrases in his limited vocab that won over many. "I love you." Li assured the Swedish colleagues that Geely is Geely, Volvo is Volvo, meaning a non-intrusive policy would largely leave Volvo alone. Geely's acquisition of Volvo was more than just a financial transaction. They offered something far more vital: freedom. By providing Volvo with much needed working capital and broader access to the Chinese market, Geely adopted a policy of non-interference. In an exclusive interview, the Volvo's Asia-Pacific country manager revealed a stark contrast. He said, "Under Ford, every action was tightly controlled, and we had to think twice about everything. But Geely has granted us far more flexibility to develop what we need and will need." This straightforward strategy allowed Volvo to regain autonomy, enabling them to excel at what they do best. It created a nurturing environment in which Volvo could thrive naturally. The results speak for itself. In 2022, Volvo achieved 46.3 billion in revenue and a net profit of 2.9 billion, marking an 8% growth year over year. Far from ruining Volvo cars, the Chinese investment has rejuvenated the Swedish company, making it more successful than ever before.